right, and we are live. I forgot about the latency this time. It's been a long day, ladies and gentlemen, but good evening. It is 8:16 p.m. on June 7th, 2024. We are here for our evening tropical discussion, our evening tropical update, as the name implies. And I'll get it right out of the gate. It looks like this time around we might have two separate entities to watch. Not going to go calling them anything by title, not going to go highlighting anything of major significance. I'm not going to go mentioning any sort of classifications, but it looks like tropical features are on the horizon as our models more or less catch up with the propagation of our Madden-Julian oscillation. You can already see that our monsoonal trough and the Central American gyre are really starting to build in. You can take a look at the water vapor. That's why I have the water vapor pulled up tonight, so we can get a better idea of exactly how much moisture we're starting to deal with. We're seeing widespread thunderstorm coverage really ramping up across the Yucatan Peninsula. Almost the entirety of Central America and South America is blanketed by a really good quadrant of very good garden variety thunderstorm activity, whether it be over the higher terrain features of northern South America or confined to the lower valley regions. So all in all, things are very moist out there across the tropics. We do have some dry air being pushed into our Gulf of Mexico thanks to the trough that is finally digging its way into the eastern half of the U.S. You can see it right up in through here, just off to the top, the uppermost portion of the satellite imagery here. And that was as expected. This is definitely what we were looking out for. This is what we had mentioned could potentially disturb tropical activity from going off, at least right around this time. We'd been bullseyeing the 10th to the 21st, and it looks like all systems are halfway a go is what we'll say. We're not going to say all systems go. We do have our organization of the moisture field out there. Our anticyclone is beginning to build in across Central America, which means our low-level rotation, our cyclonic rotation is probably going to become a little bit more readily apparent over the next several days and could last us all the way into July. We'll go ahead and take a quick glance at that tonight. I will openly say, though, this is probably going to be a somewhat abbreviated live stream just because it has been a long day. I have to be up early the next couple of days for a leadership development course I'm taking with the Navy over the next couple of days. It's a requirement on top of the drilling that I'm doing this weekend, so that's been pulling me in all sorts of different directions. Almost knocked over my TikTok tripod. And yeah, so let's get into it, but first, let's say hello to everybody. Thanks so much for everybody taking some time out of your Friday night to come and say hello and talk some tropics. So it looks like we've already had a pretty good hubbub going on in the chat, starting right off with Richard Perez with the $5 donation. Thank you very much for kicking us off on a high note. The Guy 6U, as per the European model in recent runs, it shows anywhere from 10 to 12 inches of precip for the Sunshine State. We shall see, to tell you the truth, because I've been looking at the models today, finally having a chance to digest a little bit of that information, and it does not show as much. But we'll still be seeing quite a bit of rainfall, so don't get that confused. We're definitely going to see an uptick in our thunderstorm and shower coverage regardless. Let's see, the Miami Mommy is here with us. Thank you very much. Sharon Jackson, good to see you. Definitely good to have you in the chat. We're going to talk about the Panhandle, that's for sure. Chris Mazzell, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Richard Perez with another $2 donation. Nomad Avenue 6. Matt F150, good to see you, brother. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Let's see, who else? Lots of camaraderie going on in the chat, and I am here for it. I'm definitely here for it. Caleb Kostoff, thank you so much. Zenful, thank you for tuning in, even for just a brief moment. Mick and Marley, I hope everything is good in your neck of the woods as well. I'm glad you're saying hello and tuning in just from a distance. That's okay. You don't always have to tune into the chat and go ahead and have a conversation with folks. If you want to just listen in, no offense taken whatsoever. It's nice to have you with us in spirit no matter what. Nicholas Walt, hello from Theodore, Alabama. Caleb, let's see, who else do we have in here? Jennifer, I just found out that per Florida law, you can refill prescriptions early if you are in a county that has a hurricane warning. That is actually excellent information. Definitely really good information. I want to go ahead and let me go ahead and pin this to the top of the chat because we don't have anything else. I almost put user in timeout. That was a complete accident, Jennifer, if you're still there. I went ahead and pinned that comment to the top of the chat because that is very relevant information, especially as we get closer and closer to really getting into the trenches of the tropical Atlantic season. Let's see, Thomas Dellinger, my mind over matter. Hello there. Kevin Rivera, thank you very much for joining us from Puerto Rico. Gabriel, what's up, buddy? Good to see you in the chat. Corey, let's see, One Nation Nation Weather. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's good to see you in there, bro. And haven't seen you in a little bit for a while. It has been a little while. As a matter of fact, you said that. Twilight Firefly 100. We got a lot of people in tonight. So you know what? With all that being said, Helena, Brianna, Brenda, Nomad Avenue 6, Elite Chief Star, Gregory Goodman, Nicholas, Richard, PM. Let's go ahead and kick right off. Peter Moss. I hope I didn't forget anybody. You guys are wonderful tuning in tonight. This is a broad perspective of what we have going on out there. Going to give you one more generalized look at the overall big picture perspective. We have an upper level low sitting over Baja, California, driving a lot of good copious convection over the higher terrain features of Mexico, the desert southwest, and in fact, it looks like their monsoon season has officially started. This looks very, very, very familiar for me, especially having been a forecaster for the western United States for a considerable amount of time. It looks like we are finally in full-fledged monsoon season out there for the most part. So I wouldn't be surprised if my mom and dad are seeing a lot of good thunderstorm activity down there in Tucson on a regular basis, alongside extensively hot temperatures. Dry air once again over the eastern half of the United States with some guard variety severe thunderstorms as expected for the Great Plains. As always, although it has been noticeably different in terms of the level of severe weather we've had over the last couple of days, over the last week now. I really haven't had too much to say over on the TikTok or even over on here. And finally, looking out across the Atlantic, so the Atlantic is very moist, very unstable. You can already see that some of our climatology models are verifying for all intents and purposes. If you look all through this general area, just tons and tons of really good mid-level and upper-level moisture. Not a whole lot of Saharan dust out there. Definitely not a whole lot of Saharan dust. And, I've been looking at a couple of the charts recently progressed or produced on X, the old Twitter, and there are actually some scientists, some big-name meteorologists out there highlighting that we are below average in terms of our Saharan dust so far into this hurricane season and into the meteorological summer. So that's definitely something worth paying attention to. So we shall see exactly what goes on over the next month and a half, because it does seem like we could get some action. But all right, gave you the general overview. Let's dig in. So I pulled up the GFS, but we're going to go right over to our European AI model. We're going to save the GFS for last. The GFS has been doing something ridiculous. I apologize in advance. I'm like 95% to the way to 100% fully recovered, but my throat tends to get a little froggy every now and again. So if you see me sipping on water, please just disregard. I want to make sure I can keep the chat going. So the reason we're starting with the European AI model, the artificial intelligence model, number one is because it is a detachment of the European model, and everyone loves to put their faith and allegiance in the all ever being Euro. This is our 12Z model run, and one thing that we're starting to notice here is something clicked at 12 Zulu. Something really clicked at 12 Zulu, and now all of our models, more or less, are really singing in unison, which is really good. That's the convergence that we had been talking about for a while on this channel. My confidence will go up just a little bit, and then it'll go back down. We'll come up and then go back down, because we'll have some model agreement. We'll have some ensemble agreement, but there wouldn't be a whole lot of convergence. And if you watch as we go through the next panels of all of our different operational models, you'll see that right out of the gate into next week, we already have a little bit of model convergence. That's something, albeit very heavily sheared, is going to try to develop off of our Yucatan Peninsula, move through the Yucatan Channel, and come up in a very, very reminiscent path that a few of our other Central American gyre storms have taken. I'm not going to use Idalia as the number one example, but as a matter of fact, Category 5 Hurricane Michael back in 2018, I still can't believe I missed that hurricane. 2018 was the year that Halloween was rebooted. We had the new David Gordon Green franchise. Don't copyright me, YouTube. And that's when Michael Myers returned to the big screen, and we had Cat 5 Hurricane Michael that came out of a Central American gyre in October of that hurricane season. So, incredible storm. It's a forgotten storm, in my opinion. I believe Mark Sudduth said the same thing, as a matter of fact, that Hurricane Michael isn't talked about enough, and it was a cataclysmic storm, a catastrophe up there for the panhandle of Florida. And then obviously we all know Idalia. Even here on this channel, Idalia was what kickstarted the Weather Center. Starting to see some kind of an area of low pressure, albeit very weak and very ragged out. But you can see that the AI Euro is developing something weak, whether it be a tropical depression or a low-end tropical storm. Definitely going to produce a lot of rainfall for the state of Florida. And then check this out. Right after that, our gyre continues to fire up and continues to produce lots of mid to upper level embedded vorticity, spinning around the cyclonic curvature down in the low to mid levels, all the way up to that anticyclone in the upper levels, which is exactly what I was talking about on Monday of this week. It's still the same week. Gosh, everything is blurred together at this point. Earlier this week, when I had drawn that thumbnail that seemed to tweak a bunch of people off for some strange reason, I'm going to go right back into that explanation. As that gyre continues to spin and that area of instability and that rotation continues to slingshot small couplets of vorticity, they're going to try to consolidate. And the European artificial intelligence model has a second low pressure system sneaking back up towards the panhandle. And this is not, I guess you could say, unbelievable. This is definitely doable if you look at the synoptic pattern around this area. However, the critical component here is going to be the timing on this. The timing is going to be very critical on this. We have seen a lot of ensemble member agreement that something could develop down in this general area right over top where that greatest area of rising motion is, produced by the MJO developing our CAG, our CAG, only it would be pushed off this direction. So we've had a number of ensembles and ensemble runs from a multitude of different model platforms mentioning that some kind of an area of low pressure could get slingshot out of our gyre and then bump off towards the west. And the main reason being is we're going to go into a negative PNA, which is a Pacific North American oscillation, which basically in layman's terms, we're going to have a pattern switch. We're going to go from trough ridge to ridge trough. No. Strike that, reverse it, like so. We're going to have a trough out over the west and a ridge building up over the east, and that's what's going to allow for that stuff to kind of mix off to the west. In the current iteration of the 12 Zulu European model here, it does not do that. Keeps things kind of pumping up and moving up towards Florida. I'm not too sure where the rest of the loop just went, why it's lagging all of a sudden. But anyways, there's the picture there. You come over to our Canadian model. The Canadian model has been very back and forth. So for the last couple of days, I've noticed at 0Z particularly, the Canadian model wants to try to jump something up and bring it up towards Florida. And in this iteration on 12 Zulu, it looks like just a bunch of strung out rainfall. And I believe that's probably because of the frontal system we have moving in up towards the north there. Over the last 36 hours, it's been a little disappointing, more or less, for some of us looking at the model runs, because it almost looked like we went from potential tropical activity, whether it just be a disturbance or a wave that gets sucked into the gyre and tries to consolidate and just pumps up a bunch of moisture and energy towards Florida or the southeast. Then it turned into, oh, we're just getting a cold front, and that's the bummer. But now we're cycling back. It seems like models are catching up, and it actually looks like we could have, I wouldn't say a very active period throughout the back end of June. We're almost to the halfway mark already, but I wouldn't say a very active or even an active period. More or less just an interesting period is what I'll say. For the sake of not hyping things up, I'll go ahead and tone down the terminology a little bit and say we could have a very interesting setup for the second half of June for us to really dig into and investigate as to whether or not we're going to get any named systems, or if they're just going to be more ragged out disturbances, systems that are strung out and elongated like those accordion or those noodle-looking appendages, thanks to our frontal systems and our troughs that continue to work their way through. I do think as we continue to trend towards a big bubble, no trouble, big old ridge over the eastern half of North America, the models are slowly but surely going to jump on the same page and start to try to develop a little something more out there, whether it be more of a Texas, Louisiana issue, or even a Mexico issue, or a southeast United States issue for Florida. As you can see, as you go towards the mid to latter parts of the Canadian model, it develops a somewhat organized tropical storm and then pumps it right into the Texas, Louisiana coast. Kind of headed towards the Houston area. In the western Louisiana coastline, well off away from the Baton Rouge, New Orleans area, kind of down due south of where Barksdale Air Force Base is, up in the northwestern quadrant of Louisiana. So very interesting there for sure. Icon, like I had said earlier with you guys, in terms of all of our models are suddenly digging in. If you watch as you move through time, this is 18Z, we're finally singing the same song and dance here, which is the convergence we were wanting to look for. If you go through time, you see low pressure development on our icon, and then bam, right there off the panhandle, we're getting a little something right around that same general time frame that the European AI model was calling for right there. So if you look, we're pretty neck and neck. This is 18 Zulu on Wednesday, June the 12th. You come over to the icon, this is 18 Zulu on June the 12th. So perfect convergence in terms of our model agreement, and this is the icon. The icon is usually one that's also conservative, just like the European model. In fact, I want to say that this is probably one of maybe a very small cluster of model runs to where the icon is actually developing something. So the icon has been slowly, very not ignorant, but very stubborn in development of anything, even if it just be a ragged out kind of piece of energy. And don't worry, I can see people talking in the chat. We got a lot of folks. I'm not ignoring you, but like I said, remember, it's been a long day for me, so I want to get a lot of information out in the open. I want to talk over what it is we're seeing, and then I'll open up the floor to questions, and I'll continue to look through the chat a little bit here and there, but I also don't want to get lost in the sauce and forget what it is that we're briefing, since tonight we do have a little bit more of a layer to peel back. If you look at the 12Z icon, the 12Z icon actually has a low pressure system trying to develop into a bit of a tropical storm, almost a very low end, maybe more mid-grade 45 50 mile an hour Alberto, we'll say. And it kind of hangs out off the Big Bend coastline, just dropping lots of rainfall. And it's very interesting to see the icon do that, because if you look, we see development according to the 12 Zulu sometime around late in the day on Wednesday into very early morning Thursday. It finally tries to wrap up into something, and then you take it through to the end of the loop all the way into Saturday, and there's still something out there. So very interesting. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not super sold on this. I'm still very iffy with the amount of fluctuations that we've had in our models, especially the GFS. I'm not too sure why there are so many other sources out there leading off with the GFS, but that's neither here nor there. The GFS has been on something. I don't know if it's hard broke, if it's completely kaput, if it just has no idea what it's doing, but the GFS has slowly come around, and now we'll finally switch on over to the GFS, and it has been showing some more realistic model runs. And in fact, if you look at the timing here, once again, a little slow, but once again, the GFS is developing some sort of area of low pressure just off the west coast of Florida, down off the panhandle of Florida near the Big Bend area, Apalachicola Bay, Panama City, and then it wraps up and heads in a little bit more organized than what the likes of the Canadian and the Icon and even the European AI model are calling for. But on the bright side, I at least agree with this. It's not like what we were seeing a couple days ago. Let's go back to 0Z on Thursday before we did a live stream, before we did a discussion. I mean, check this out. I'll take you through the loop, and we get this big old thing that just kind of encompasses the entire Gulf of Mexico, and then we get cyclogenesis over the entirety of Florida. You go to 12Z yesterday, and 12Z was even worse. You just had a gigantic, look at this. You had one gyre feature that lifted up and came out of the Yucatan, was headed west. Oh, here comes Willow to join us. And we had, this was somewhat of a bit of a realistic run, give or take. And then we had this convectively induced low pressure that literally organized over Jamaica and shot up over Florida, almost looking like Hurricane Irma from back in the day, where she snuck in just to the north of Cuba and then made a beeline right through the heart of southern Florida, almost due north. So GFS has definitely been on something. I'm not too sure what's going on with it. It looks like we finally, whatever may have come into range for the radio SONs, the Raywind SON data that we send up in our weather balloons at 0 and 12 Zulu, it definitely seems like whatever is in range or whatever adjustment in the atmosphere that our observations at our hot model times captured today has hopefully course corrected it a little bit. 12 Zulu looked a little bit more realistic as well, with a broad area of low pressure. This looks to be more so convectively induced. This is a this is a hydrostatic model, so it tends to really fixate on areas of strongest precip and thunderstorm action, and it'll try to force development of a low pressure area. That's where we get these phantom systems that pop up out of nowhere. But it seems like whatever we captured today in our radio balloons, our weather balloons, we're finally picking up what we're putting down across the spectrum. We have the GFS kind of hanging out, saying hello to the crowd. The European AI model has been very consistent, developing something, and it's right on track with what the Canadian and the Icon model are picking up, although the Canadian has lost faith that we're going to have any kind of an organized system. We could see it circle back. There is an area of low pressure right around that same time, forming in the Bay of Campeche, it's weird. I've heard so many different pronunciations from that. Willow, you keep bumping my hand. My mouse is going to go all over the place. Let's keep the train rolling, though. So here we're going to quickly glance at our long range GFS ensemble, to tell you the truth. I did not know this. This was a function that I had just recently discovered through one of the hurricane chats I'm a part of on X. And believe it or not, if you hold up for a little while in time, if you wait for the model to cycle through a full day into the following day, if you go back in time to 0 Zulu the previous morning, so for example, right now we're set to 0Z on June 6th, you can actually look at a long-range GEFS, an ensemble product of the GFS. You can go 800 plus hours into the future. Now, obviously, we're not trying to focus on anything specific here. We're just trying to get an idea of what one of our long-range ensembles are thinking. And I've noticed the last couple of model runs with the ensembles, there goes Willow bumping my hand again. I don't mean to go that fast, guys. The ensembles are thinking there's definitely going to be some kind of a developing feature out there in the Gulf. For sure, and we have very good convergence in our ensembles. A little bit of a spread, but in terms of timing, it seems like we're starting to see that coming together of our ensemble members, the 30-some-odd members that the GFS has on its ensemble product. But then if you scroll even further through time, the GFS is thinking we're just going to continue to see feature after feature pumping out of there, and then we're finally going to see the MDR wake up towards the second half of June. If you look, we have a couple Caribbean runners in there. There's only a few of them, and I'm noticing that there's quite a few of them that try to move up in this general fashion like this. And the only reason I'm even mentioning this, even though this is far out in time, is just a friendly reminder. We have a lot of folks in the chat tonight, 178 viewers. I hope there's a number of folks tuning in from the islands, and I will touch base with you all in the chat real quick in a moment. But the reason I want to mention this altogether is because of my old frontline mention before. If you look down and through here, a lot of these long-range MDR systems that the ensembles are highlighting, at least the small members that do consolidate our wave train out there in the Atlantic, are highlighting that these features are going to push through the Lesser Antilles. And if you guys have been watching this channel for a little while, since we started our tropical updates in May, I've been mentioning Lesser Antilles. There it is. Hold on. The Lesser Antilles are going to be our front lines. That's going to be our area of, I guess you could say, almost high alert. And I don't say that as if there's a feature out there imminently, but I'm saying in terms of when there are more amplified waves, when the African easterly jet really starts to amp up and move our ITCZ into that more favorable 8 to 10 degree latitude flow across the main development region, that's when our Lesser Antilles, particularly the Windward Islands, are really going to want to pay close attention. And then from there, we get a little bit of a unanimous spread. Some go out to sea just like Lee and Nigel did last year. Others want to come rocking on, rolling right through, get some Caribbean runners that may impact the Greater Antilles, particularly Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. But we'll see. This is the back end of June. And you go all the way out, and you can see they're coming. They're definitely coming. Whether or not we actually realize this many organized features remains to be seen, but you can see that every single feature, it's a little alarming to tell you the truth. If you watch, every single general feature before they either escape or go into the Caribbean are going to hit our Lesser Antilles. So I really need our Lesser Antilles folks watching, just paying attention. That's it. We're not saying to prepare or anything. I mean, yes, you should be prepared, but we're not bracing for an imminent impact. We're not looking for anything substantial over the next couple of days. You're good for the next 5 to 7 days, I can confidently say. But overall, as we move through the hurricane season, I've been saying it time and time again, we really got to watch for our Lesser Antilles out there because we're not going to have the close shaves like we did last year. We had Philippe, close shave. We had Rena that never made it. We had Sean, I believe it was, never made it. We had Tammy, close shave. We had Vince 13 times over. He never formed up. This time, I don't really believe we're going to be that lucky. Coming on over to our European ensembles. The Euro ensembles, the individual members, are still a little wishy-washy. Some have some weak low-pressure areas moving over the state of Florida into the southeast, but then a larger area of concentrated lowering pressures over the western half of the Gulf of Mexico, the Yucatan and the Bay of Campeche is how I'm going to call it. And finally, towards the very tail end of this latest model run, we do get a few more organized members out there, whether they, again, splitting down the middle, moving over towards the state of Florida or moving towards Louisiana, Texas. So truthfully, as weird as it may sound, we're going to have to watch the entire Gulf of Mexico because we just don't have that agreement. And I'm not saying watch it for Alberta or, we've been waiting for Alberta. I don't remember the B-name storm at this point. I'm not saying we're going to have to watch for Alberto or, God forbid, a hurricane. We're just going to have to watch for features out there, energy vorticity that may try to consolidate, wrap up, and become something a little bit more than just low pressure. Right now, that's all we have out there is low pressure, instability producing the thunderstorms and a rainfall. Which, speaking of the rainfall, we're going to go back here first, and I'm going to go against the grain because I know I typically don't do it this way. We're going to look at our total precip accumulation for the full model run, and then we'll go back to 24-hour because I just want to hone in on a few things. So all in all, we'll take you quickly through the 12Z European run, and this is kind of why I'd mentioned to a few of you in the chat that we want to be careful with the rainfall estimates that we're promoting out there because they've been very back and forth. The models, with as much as they've adjusted, whether we're going to get this, we're going to get that, we're going to get a front, we're going to get a trough, we're going to get a low, we're going to get a cyclone. There's been a lot of wiggling and wobbling out there. So are we going to see rain? 100%. At this point in time, this is probably the easiest rainfall forecast that you could probably make for the state of Florida and for a large amount of people out there along the Gulf coastline. And Willow is officially sitting on my hand, so I'm going to try to navigate my mouse as best as I can without messing around with her behind. But if you notice, the 12Z European model actually keeps the state of Florida at a very steady 2 to 3.5 inches of rainfall outside of maybe that small area around the Big Bend area, which is really in line with where all of our sudden model runs at 12 Zulu particularly are calling for some kind of a maybe elongated disturbance, tropical depression, something trying to get its act together, moving on in. So we'll see. We'll have to wait and see for sure. You come on over to our 24-hour precip using the European Ensembles, the control member here. And again, you can see some pretty consistent rainfall that continues to occur over the state of Florida. You can see to the north over the mid-Atlantic, the Ohio-Mississippi valleys, we get a little bit of precip action from that trough and frontal system that's going to draw everything up. But I'm leaving because of the situation in the chat. All right, what's going on at Willow? I need you to move your behind so I can use my mouse. I'm sorry. Move this over. What's going on in the chat? Now I got to get back in the chat, and I'm not going to break professionalism this time. I refuse. So what's going on in the chat? Let's go back up. Jacob, welcome in. I saw your name commented, not the username itself, but I saw someone talking to you. Caleb was talking to you, so welcome in. Good to see you. Oh, there you are, bro. We need some rain. My bad is looking like Afghanistan. Jacob, I can level with you on that one 110%. TRG Tornado, thanks very much for coming in. Hyping is like this. NHC has a 10% chance for a tropical depression, and someone says a hurricane is expected. Yeah, that's the true textbook definition. 10% chance? Yeah, we're getting a major hurricane for sure. Willow has entered the live stream. She's still here. She's just off camera. Let's see. Brandon, you were literally trolling too. Who that Michael Mullins guy is a troll. Who are we talking about? Naz question. How well does the tropical hazards outlook usually verify? So to tell you the truth, Kevin, I'll be honest, it lost a lot of my confidence last hurricane season. And the reason why is I distinctly remember too. I remember it vividly, and if Gabriel is still in the chat, he can testify to this, because him and I, our families, we had gotten together, we went out to a hockey game, it was either late October, I think it was late October, and we had just recently gotten another CPC update of their global tropics, and they brought up the Caribbean, where we were looking for Vince, up to the 40+% chance of tropical cyclone development, and it didn't happen. We didn't have anything out there. So it goes to show that CPC is an official source, but it's not really an end-all, be-all. It's just another one of those context clues or another one of the puzzle pieces. Sometimes the pattern that they look at initially to draw their charts doesn't quite verify either. So perhaps when they produced that chart specifically and disseminated that product, it looked a lot more ideal, a lot more favorable, and then eventually as you roll through time, they're not going to send an amendment or a correction to their chart. They never do that. At least I don't think they do that. If they amend their charts or make adjustments in between runs, I don't believe so. And perhaps maybe that's the situation we saw last year. But it's a nice little, I guess, identifier of where the officials are looking. So folks like us who want to provide content for you guys on a routine basis, we know where to dig in, so that way we're in line with the official sources that are producing a larger scale overview or outlook. Brandon, I'm not troll. What is Brandon doing in here? That Michael Mullins guy is a troll. The letter I is always the one to watch. I agree. Winnie Smith, welcome in. I don't think I said hello to you yet. K-yes-Z. Good to see you, Jack's Hurricane, Robbie Lynn McCrary. Thanks very much for joining, guys. I do appreciate it. Robbie Lynn, I've seen a lot of your comments on previous live streams. It's great to have you in the chat tonight. Melita, good evening. Thank you for joining us from the Cayman Islands. Good to see you. Sabrina, Venture Horizon. I think I saw someone brand spanking new in the chat as well. I saw someone commented a little bit ago, and I apologize, viewers, if we're slowing down. I just like to try to say hello to everybody and greet everyone. Where did they go? I saw them a second ago. Freezing, welcome in. I could have sworn, if you guys are new to the chat right now, please feel free to drop a comment in. I saw them earlier, but yeah, Gabriel is still in the chat. And you remember, dude, I even said when CPC has something like that, it's almost guaranteed that we're going to have something, and then nothing happened. So I'm not falling into that trap ever again. I'm trying to find who it was who introduced themselves, and I apologize. I kind of glazed over you, and I want to say hello. So if you're still in the chat, if you're fresh to joining us, please feel free to drop a hello in one more time, and I promise I'll catch you. I'm just trying to get through the majority of the brief before I derail and start saying hello again or get sidetracked because I'm scatterbrained and tired. Let's see. I'm going to go just a little bit further up. There you are. Why are people calling this sweet young man hyping? He's not hyping anything up. Y'all need to be nicer with this generation. I do agree. Jaquez? I'm not too sure if I'm saying that right, but welcome in. I don't believe I've seen you in the chat before. I'm new here. I have a couple questions about what's happening. There it is. There's your comment. Okay, so Jaquez? I'm so sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. 110%. New here from New Orleans, JFK, JT, good to see you guys. Wow, a lot of people in here this evening. Excellent. Wonderful way to spend the Friday night. And you look at the GEFS, the Ensemble is the control member of our total precip. Even the GFS is kind of sort of backing off just a little bit on our rainfall totals through the period. Eventually, we're going to have that really good accumulation over a period of 336 hours. Look at the loop at the top, guys. This is a 300-plus hour period. That's why I don't like to lead off with these types of forecast charts, because they can be a little misleading. Some folks will go all the way to the end, take a picture of that, and say, look at how much rain we're going to get from this storm, and that's not really the case. So all in all, it does look to be a very fruitful, moist, and productive week for us here in the state of Florida. And we're going to get some rain. Now, tropical development, we're still on the fence. But let's continue on. This is where it gets a little more interesting again. So what we're looking at here is going to be our individual 30 members of the GFS. And I'll go ahead and zoom this in. I just got to remember this time to actually close it down, because I always seem to leave this zoomed in. And then when I switch the screen, you guys are like, what are you talking about? Jaquez, did I say that right? Is there a qu in there, or is it Jaquez? Like with a K. But yes, I agree with Nomad Avenue 6. Excellent time. I love this so much. It's great. This actually reinvigorates my energy levels. I was feeling a little tired earlier, but it's definitely something really, really productive. I love it. I hate being mean, but I'm not sure if this guy is totally reliable. I feel like we should watch the actual news. Well, I mean, I've actually been coordinating with actual news producers. I've met with a few of the meteorologists here in Central Florida, and I'm not in close contact with them, but I'm in communication with them. And for those of you who are brand new to the channel, I'll go ahead and very quickly... Okay, so Jaquez. There we go. I think I got it this time. Perfect. For those of you who are brand new, I'm not a official source, but I am a professional source. So I'm very close to receiving my degree in atmospheric science with Mississippi State University, and I've trained alongside countless certified individuals, both from a civilian and a military weather perspective. I have 10 years of Air Force Weather Agency experience, and I'm currently serving as a naval aerographer with the United States Navy, continuing to fulfill that military component of the weather while I'm finishing up my degree, because the plan is not only to step into a broadcast position over the next couple of years, but to also commission in the United States military, become a weather officer. Knock on wood, praise the Lord. If that's in the cards, Father, I leave it in your hands. But just to give you an idea, so I'm not going to say I'm the real deal, but I do have a professional. I mean, I am a professional in the weather career field. I need to stop being modest. I know the folks in my class today would probably be pissed at me right now if I was toning myself down, but it's true. I am a professional in the weather career field. I just don't like to air that out too much. I'd rather let the science and the way I communicate to you guys do the talking, literally. So we're looking at our GFS members for 12 Zulu, and what's very interesting is we're kind of split down the middle once again. So if you guys look, the control model is thinking something's going to spin up and move up towards the Florida Panhandle, the Big Bend area, which is right in track with what we've seen for 12 Zulu and 18 Zulu's operational runs of the GFS. However, if you look at some of the other individual members, there's a number of them that right around the 14th to the 15th, and even pushing it into about the 16th, want to take something a little bit more organized, very similar to where we saw Michael and Adalia originate just off the eastern shore of Belize and the Yucatan Peninsula, and try to channel it, pull it up, and then kick it off towards the west. And I would assume probably because of that upper level ridge we were talking about a little earlier in the stream. This, I would ignore Ensemble member 22. At this point in time, we can X that off the chat for sure, X that off the live stream. I do not see a Category 5 hurricane headed for the Florida Keys. If that were the case, we would definitely be hyping in this chat right now, but we're just going to go ahead and nix that. What was I going to show you guys? Here we go. Let's go over to our GEFS control model. We'll go to North America this time, and I want to show you the height anomalies. I want to show you the pattern flip, because I've been seeing a lot of folks out there mention pattern flip, changing this, changing that, but if you check this out, you'll see it plain as day. So this would be our positive PNA right here. I'll just hold it steady right here on June 11th to 12 Zulu, first thing in the morning. If you look to the left of the United States, over the western half of North America, you have that ridging. It's not very grand ridging. It's very low to mid-amplitude ridging, and then you have some mid-amplitude troughing. A little bit more of a sharper trough axes up towards the eastern half of Canada, the northeast, getting down into the Appalachians. Positively tilted trough, so that means it's probably going to try to move out a little bit faster. If you have more of a neutral to a negatively tilted trough, it's really going to depend on the intensity of the system that it's helping to spin up, because that'll determine whether or not that cool air or whatnot is going to hang around, if that trough is going to stay in place, and if that high pressure down at the surface that is supported by our cold trough aloft is going to hang out. And in this case, since we have a positively tilted trough, it seems like we're not going to see a heck of a lot of genesis of a low pressure, really substantial cold pool coming down, wrapping around the backside of it. That usually gives us our severe weather. And so as a result, as you get into the back end of June, notice there's the pattern flip. We're now in a negative Pacific North Atlantic North American oscillation. I keep messing that up because there's Atlantic, American, Dipsy Doodah, Siberia, Alaskan Husky, all kinds of different oscillations out there. The PNA is the key takeaway here. And as you look here, perfect representation here. We have ridging up over the eastern half of the continent, and then we have troughing down over the west. And this is what I believe is going to help to really open up our environment down there over the south and kind of hold steady. It looks like it's going to hold steady, and it looks like there's a bit of breakaway energy that the model picks up on, a trough that breaks away and tries to work its way underneath the pattern. That could be almost detrimental. Almost detrimental. We'll have to see that. This is the 18Z GEFS, so take it with a grain of salt, and we're going way out there, so, I don't know. But in terms of my confident level, guys, I know I've seen a couple of folks in the chat ask as well. I would say that we can probably bump up to about a 15-20% chance that this could try to organize. And we're not going to go as far as, like I said at the very beginning of this stream, we're not going to go as far as trying to classify it. We're not going to go as far as to say, Alberto, we're not going to do that. But it definitely seems like we're going to start to get some areas of low pressure that may try to consolidate and squeeze together, especially once we can get out of the positive PNA into a more negative pattern. I believe I have that pulled up to show you guys as well. Not that. Do I still have it up? There it is. All right, so let me find it. This is our Euro for the PNA, and let's go to the trends. And as you can see, we're going to dip from a very, very positive PNA, which is that trough axis that we saw over the eastern half of the United States, very anomalous troughing, down into a somewhat moderated, weak, negative PNA. If you come over to the EPS, the ensembles, you can see it starts to trend down, and we go all the way into a -2 value, which shows not necessarily a dominating PNA, but, something worth monitoring. That ridge is going to start to build in where it belongs in terms of getting some tropical Atlantic activity. Well, not Atlantic, but you know what I mean, the basin activity across the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and so on and so forth. So, anybody have any particular questions specifically? Let me go back through the chat and see if I've missed anything. Brandon is a common name. This is now Hype Friday. I'm joking, please. I mean, it is. It's Exciting Friday, that's for sure. Of course, that panel is what he immediately points out. Why not just ignore it if it is not credible? Well, of course, raised. You're saying, why would I pay attention to that? I literally said, don't pay attention to it. I said, please don't look at that and try to think or take something from it, because there's no way in heck we're getting a Cat 5 this early in the season. Could we see one or two this hurricane season altogether? Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I see what you did there, though. You're trying to kind of use, what's the word I'm looking for? What is it? Trying to flip the script a little bit. Don't pay attention to it, guys, but subliminally, I'm trying to tell you to pay attention because, in essence, behind the scenes, I'm trying to give you guys the message that a Category 5 is coming. No, that's not what I'm saying. Definitely not. I'm fast with trolls, TRG, that's funny. Go Yankees. Random. Nazario, I am so sorry for the trolls. You have a beautiful and growing channel. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, sincerely, especially from a new sub. That means a lot, joining the community, guys. What is the percentage you give this system? So in terms of rainfall chances and any kind of energy coming up, 100%, we're all the way there. We're definitely going to get some good storm coverage. Probably see some elevated winds out of this stuff, not just with the system specifically, but with the fact that we have a butting up against of separate features. We have ridging out over the Atlantic that's trying to build in, scoop our moisture up. The trade winds down there in the Caribbean are fairly active, around 15, 20 knots, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've seen, looking not only at short-range models, but analysis data. We have our gyre coming in, so when you think about it from just a pressure gradient perspective, you have a low pressure here, high pressure here, trough coming in, so that's just going to help to kind of create a funnel. And that's what's going to help to enhance our activity. That's where it's kind of a catch-22. If these features come in close proximity to one another and we don't get that favorable window from the 10th to, say, the 16th, then anything that does try to jut up out of there is just going to be stretched out. It's going to look like, instead of trying to ball up like this, as it tries to flow out, it's just going to get stretched like this and keep moving. So timing is key. Timing is critical. And we are not in El Nino. We are in a neutral pattern right now, JT. Neutral pattern. We are not going back to El Nino. That's for sure. Let's see. And let me guess, he is forecasting an exorbitant and unrealistic amount of rainfall to hit Florida. Raised, if you watched the chat, I actually said about 30 minutes ago, in fact, rewind, please do not fixate on the individual model runs talking about 10, 12 inches of rainfall, because the general average does seem to be about 3 to 6 inches, especially for the southern half of the peninsula and possibly getting up towards the panhandle, the west coast, depending on what does try to manifest itself. So again, you tried, swing and a miss. I'm definitely not, you guys can keep going on, but I'm not too sure. We're reaching here now. In fact, I would say you guys are hyping up the potential hype that I could be hyping. I mean, you guys are hyping up what's not happening. All right, so before we wrap up the live stream, I wanted to show you guys our latest European seasonal data. I don't recall if this was available to us on Wednesday when we talked, so I wanted to go over it really briefly. And the key takeaways here are two things. Number one, the anomalies in our Pacific Enso areas. Pardon me. So, not anybody, wow, I was reading the chat. I'm noticing our anomalies in the Enzos 1, 2 through 4. We're starting to see that our other models, the North American multi-model ensemble and the Euro especially, are no longer calling for a very substantial La Nina. It's keeping us in a cool neutral to a weakened La Nina state, and towards the very tail end of the hurricane season, trying to bring back our cooler subtropics. That could possibly just be a seasonal cooling effect that's happening over the North Atlantic, so we're not going to take that too far into effect. But it is worth noting, and I'm starting to notice that it seems like our models are starting to course correct, just as we have more or less hinted towards on the last couple of live streams. I'd say the last several live streams, where I've mentioned that a lot of folks are putting a lot of emphasis on the Gulf Coast, but we may need to watch a little bit closer for our Irmas, our Charlies, and etc. folks that are going to, or I should say not folks, but storms that are going to try to make a run for the Greater Antilles and either escape up through the Bahamas, push into the Mid-Atlantic, go out to sea, become a potential impactor for Bermuda, or shoot right into the southeast. And if we zoom in on the North Atlantic, not that one, there it is. If we zoom in on this and go over to our precip for the latest seasonal outlook on the Euro, come here, Willow. If you look at July, notice what we're seeing here. Notice this sudden shift. You see that here? Kind of goes back to the thumbnail that I built for you guys a couple days ago. If you look, we're starting to see a little bit more of an indication that our ITCZ is going to stay fairly south. It looks like it's going to hover right around that 10-degree latitude line for just a bit more of time. This is into July. And notice, whoa, Willow, please don't unplug anything and get your booty, please, out of the camera. Come down here, if anything. So the Euro is starting to pick up on this easterly shift in terms of our overall precip anomalies. You go to August, and August especially, August looks really, really interesting for a large majority of our Antilles, whether they be the lesser or the greaters, the Bahamas, the Mid-Atlantic, and Florida. So I'm sticking to my guns. I'm definitely thinking that August is going to be the month we really need to watch. There are just so many things in the personal realm that are going on in August that we're just trying to bring a storm in, metaphorically speaking, spiritually speaking. You go into September and we're really seeing a mixed bag. Huge mixed bag. This whole signal here looks very 2023, looks very 2010. We have a lot of activity possibly out there for the Mid-Atlantic, the subtropics, the mid-latitudes even, but then we're also still seeing potential whispers that there could be genesis of tropical organization. I was going to combine words again in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. So we're starting to see a bit more of a mixed bag look. And then finally, as we get towards the very tail end of the hurricane season into the holiday season, naturally we got to remember that with La Nina, we're going to dry out. So what's going to end up happening is we're not going to have nearly as intense of a winter time as we did this previous season. Winter time was all about tornadoes, the south, the southeast, our low-latitude runners, our low-latitude riders riding that subtropical jet. That's not going to be the case this time. All that's going to shift to the north, so we're expecting a night and day flip in our winter pattern. This could bring snow back for a number of people out there who didn't see it this last winter time. Could be a white Christmas, and I know that's way out there. That's all I'm going to say about that. But we'll definitely need to continue to watch down for our secondary homegrown season, that's for sure. So we'll wait and see. If you come over to the North American multi-model, and I'll go ahead for the sake of time, it's after 9. I got to be up at 4 again tomorrow, so I hate to say it. I got to get ready to go soon. But if you look at the NMME, North American multi-model ensemble, we're still seeing the same signals. If you look, the general trend is something like this for July. And I'll leave that pen right there, that ink right there, and click forward. There's August. We're still seeing a general trend here out across the MDR, up towards the Greater Antilles, and then up through the southeast. I'm looking particularly, I'll change the ink right here, and notice this right in through there. This is like our core precip right there. So notice that the general trend previously, if I switch back to, let's say, we'll go to April. See the difference there? I know I just switched the page, unfortunately, but you see how the core precip here on this run back in April was kind of doing this, and I can see why there are a lot of other sources out there mentioning that Florida, the Gulf Coast, the Caribbean need to be on high alert. If you switch over to our most recent model run as we start the hurricane season, boom, we're starting to really see this eastward fetch, and this is August. September looking very similar to what the Euro seasonal outlook looks. Looks like mixed bag here. Lots of out-to-sea runners. It looks like we're going to have periods of very weak and anomalous high-pressure ridging, subtropical ridging out there over the Azores, just off the western shores of Europe. We could possibly still see some Central America action, and this is not all tropical influence. I mean, you could argue that this is all tropical energy because it's rainfall coming out of the tropics, but this is not all going to be just tropical cyclones, tropical cyclones, tropical cyclones. And that's something that we need to really reiterate and really emphasize because there are a lot of folks out there sharing this information saying 50 named storms, 75 named storms, etc. And we don't need to go thinking that. No, that's not what the case is. There's a lot of bias that goes into this model as well. We need to remember that our hottest waters are down here as well, and that's just going to cause generalized garden variety enhancement of whatever thunderstorm activity tries to get going. Oh, it looks like the trolls are back in the chat, but you know what? We are not going to give them any mind. Attention Shaddy is talking about August and September. Yes, I am, because I got the same kind of comments back in January. Attention Shad, this guy's talking about hurricane season and it's only January. Oh, shoot, wait a minute. It's hurricane season. Hey, guys, he's talking about August and September. Don't pay any attention. It's like, come on, we're going to find something to argue about, and it's going to turn into I'm not going to use the terminology, but it's going to turn into a measuring contest. I'm not going to do that for the sake of getting censored by YouTube. But anyways, that's how we're going to wrap up the chat. We're noticing slowly but surely that because of the way our El Nino/La Nina out there is wiggling and wobbling, I'll even pull that up right now because I haven't looked at this over the last couple of days. I've been heavily obligated not only to the Navy but to other personal things going on. And yeah, if you look at the 3.4 index, notice we actually went back into a bit of a warm neutral for a period of time, and now we're coming back down. So this could possibly be what our models are trying to kind of catch up on. Because again, if you remember back in the January, February, March timeframe, everybody and their mother was talking strong La Nina. I even saw a couple posts mentioning historic La Nina. What was the other one? The super La Nina, going a la Dragon Ball Z almost, like it was going to go into a super state. We're not seeing it yet. We did see that decline when we hit April all the way down to the neutral, but we have not continued from there. And that was quite a bit of spurious activity right there to bring us back out of a cool neutral into a warm neutral, and then we're going to come back down. We'll have to watch this over the next 5 to 7 days and see what happens. But right now, I would say this is kind of busting a few of our earlier seasonal climatology forecasts. In fact, we'll do a quick little double check one over. We'll go to the CANSIPs. Everyone loves the CANSIPs. And we'll do a fact check here. And this is for September. Let's go to August or June right here. So yeah, I mean, kind of the generalized picture, but if you look, most of these cool anomalies throughout the ENSOs 1, 2, and 3, 4 are sitting already at about a -8 to a -1.2. And we're definitely not quite there yet. In fact, I would say that there should probably be a lot more of this white to very, very faint blue color out there. We should be somewhere right in through here, but the model has us indicated for something right around through here. So we're already kind of busting a little bit. And if we go back in time to March, stronger La Nina already built in by this time. So the models are trying to back off a little bit. Now we're course correcting, which is exactly what I had been trying to tell you guys. Whenever we bring this climatology data up from here on out, it's not for the sake of really focusing on what's going to happen, let's predict, etc., etc. No, now we're verifying. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. We're going back in time to take a look at what January, February, March looked like, and we're noticing that our models are not quite verifying. So we got to kind of wander through this and take it day by day, one step at a time, and just kind of monitor trends. Do I think we're going to see a La Nina? 100% definitely. We're going to go into a La Nina. I don't really foresee we're going to stay at a cool neutral. We're probably going to be somewhere around a -0.5 to a -0.8. If I had to give you a realistic forecast for the next 3 to 6 months as we go through the hurricane season, that's what I more or less foresee. I'll shrink this page down so you guys can get the full view again. I told you I would. If I come back to this and show you the Nino 3-4, if we were to fast forward and put June 7th here, I would say if we were to fast forward to September, we're probably going to be looking at something right around here in this general ballpark. That would be my forecast. We're going to go from this here and then drop in like so. I really can foresee that happening. I really don't know if we're going to drop into a strong La Nina anymore. We'll have to see. We'll definitely have to see, but models are more reliable. Long-term climate models are not thinking so. We'll have to see what CPC says in their latest update here very soon, but that's going to be a very, very big factor for the hurricane season. If we're in a cool neutral to a very weakened La Nina, then yes, That's still a very favorable environment for the Atlantic. It's much better than an El Nino, let alone a strong El Nino, so let's get that out there. We're still going to have our rising motion, we're going to have our hot water temps, and we're definitely going to have enough energy out there to get some very quality and strong long track systems to get going once we get through August, September, and October, the first periphery of October. But I think what we're starting to see on the likes of not only the seasonal Euro, but on the NMME, the Cansips to a little bit of an extent, and even the CFS, the mid-range CFS, we're starting to see that kind of what you'd expect in a cool neutral weak La Nina pattern, to where we're going to see a lot of fish storms. I won't say a lot, but we're going to see some fish storms, we're going to see some Caribbean runners, and we're going to see the mid-Atlantic and the southeast become a potential threat zone. And obviously, I've had a couple people ask this as well, since we have a number of folks in the chat tonight. I'm not saying that the Gulf Coast is done, because we still have to watch June, July. Anything that does form up where we're looking right now, the Yucatan, the Bay of Campeche, the Western Caribbean, anything that forms down there and shoots north, it's game on for anybody that borders the Gulf of Mexico. And that the same goes for October and November if things hang around long enough and we get little leftover remnants of frontal systems, leftover vorticity, and etc. So everybody's on the table. What I'm saying is a generalized pattern we will likely see is this is going to be our threshold we really want to pay close attention to. And I know that doesn't seem like much of a difference. And I can already hear people in the chat, why don't you just circle the entire United States? And it's like, well, that's not what I'm saying. I'll use this map as a reference. We were talking about this for a while. We were talking Texas through to Florida and maybe the Carolinas. All I'm saying is we might see a little bit of a shift in that to this general neck of the woods. And that's all I'm saying. We'll see. We'll definitely have to see. So that's all I got for you guys. We managed to run for the full hour again. It is what it is. I got to jump in a shower very quickly. Where did Willow go? I thought, oh, there you are. Oh, no, you're down here. Never mind. I was looking in the wrong spot. Does anybody, before we wrap up the live stream, have any questions? Any questions or anything big that they'd like to air out? Brandon Black. What are Nino and Nina? How many Brandons do we have in here? I saw One Nation Weather mentioning Brandon X, Y, and Z. What is going on? Brandon Aqua. What is... This is so weird. I don't understand what's happening, but you know what? As long as it brings viewage traffic to the channel, that's all I care about. See, we don't even have to hype. We don't. All these people complaining about hype. We don't even have to hype. You joining the chat and just arguing with everybody is enough to stimulate that algorithm. So if anything, stop and leave if you want to see this channel suffer, quote unquote. I don't even have to do anything. I can just sit here and Hurricane. Oh, look what he's doing. He's hyping something up, and then it's just going to bring people in. And I say that lightly. I'm not trying to be mean or rude. It's just, it's funny. We have so many folks who, it's almost like their mission. Oh, he's going live. We got to get the keyboards ready and get ready to charge in there, guns a-blazing. But anyways, anybody in here that I could provide some genuine assistance with real quick? 1 hour of nothingness. I wouldn't necessarily say 1 hour of nothingness, but if you want to put it that way, sure thing. That's fair enough. I killed off the last hour of my night doing absolutely nothing. I guess we were all sitting here staring at each other. But let's see. Brandon's everywhere. I can see the Toy Story meme. Braden's WX, you missed it at the last second. You're joining in at the very tail end of the chat, but it's good to see you in here. Thanks for making an attempt anyways. Mike Murad, thank you very much. I did see you pop up. I didn't get a chance to acknowledge you. Brandon Black, I'm the original Brandon. I really hope you are, because I do appreciate you joining in. And honestly, I definitely appreciate everybody. Georgia freezing, like I think I've mentioned it a few different times back in the day when I've had a few other folks ask about Georgia. I really don't see you guys taking a direct hit. In fact, if you go through history, Georgia very rarely ever gets a direct hit from the Atlantic coast. Typically, you'll see something coming up from the southwest, or you'll see something scraping the coastline, and you'll get some feeder band activity, some storm surge, but you far infrequently don't see anything going right in. I did get your email, and I apologize if I did not answer you, One Nation. I honestly I haven't had much time to pop in on YouTube and really watch many videos. It's been a very crazy last 10 days. what started out as a peaceful trip to North Carolina turned into chaos, and then took forever to get home. And then I just got home yesterday, had to work throughout the day, catch up on a bunch of stuff, and now I'm suited up, all shaved, working with the Navy. And then next week, right back to more actual work and then more content. Hopefully, we can finally dial stuff in. Mamas, where are you? Psst, psst. Jack Keys, she's coming. I called her. Come here, mamas. Psst, psst. You want a little snack? Come here. If you want one, you got to come here. I'm going to lose the chat if you don't hurry up. Come on, mamas. Psst, psst. All right, I'm going to grab you then so people can see, and then we'll go get a little snack, okay? Here she is. She's right here. This is Weather Center Willow. She is our fateful mascot. She's not like Reed Timmer's Gizmo. I really don't think she'll let me take her out for an eye wall intercept or a storm chase or anything like that, but it's nice to have her in the chat when she wants to appear. I got a secondary microphone when she's here on the lap, and she knows, she kind of tells me when to end the live stream. When she starts crying, it's because she's like, okay, it's 9 o'clock, you got to give me a little snack, and then we're going to bed, right? Psst. Yep. All right. He sees plenty of Phantom Hurricanes, that's for sure. I guess so. We're not playing no Five Nights at Freddy's here, so I don't see Phantom anything. And I haven't mentioned anything about Hurricanes, so I think I provided the most insight out of anyone on this stream so far. Shoot, if that's the case, then I don't know what I'm doing. Shoot. Because my throat is definitely feeling it, that's for sure. If I just spewed out hot air, then shucks. I need to really rethink and go back, way back in time to when I first started in Air Force weather and just reevaluate everything that I learned. But a very, very big thanks to all the new viewers in. It's been a pleasure interacting with you guys, definitely. And thank you for all the folks who came in and at least made it somewhat of a dramatic chat tonight. He's hyping. Look out. The other day, I got a little ahead of myself. But I'm just going to, you love to see it. You love to see it, that's for sure. But if no one else has any real genuine questions, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up and go ahead and hit the shower and get ready for day 2 of Drill Weekend DWE. So yeah. All that being said, I really appreciate all of you guys' continued support. Silver Steel S, I'm looking right at the comment and I'm ignoring it. I feel so bad. But Silver Steel S with the donations popping up in the chat. I believe I saw one other one also a little while ago. Let me see. I hope I didn't miss it. Maybe glazed right over it because all this hype making my head spin. I feel like I have a gyre forming up in my brain right now because hype is just spinning around inside of my brain. Gosh, and I don't want this channel to be encompassed by that. But Silver Steel S, thank you kindly, sincerely, as a matter of fact, for the donation. I appreciate it so much. It definitely makes the live streams a little bit more worthwhile. I mean, granted, honestly, donations aside, I just love when we have this amount of people in the live streams. Trolls, genuine viewers alike. It's great because I love talking to you guys. It's actually something I brought up in the class today when we were doing our icebreaker. I had mentioned that I have social media platforms that I provide weather content for alongside the military weather that I do for the fleet. And I mentioned the number one thing for me is the communication, the people. I love the people. We even took a personality test. And of course, my primary traits or my primary identifier was people person, people oriented. And I'm like, oh, it makes sense. It makes sense. So, but thanks everybody for tuning in. I do really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the good times, the good vibes, and the weird vibes. I'm not going to say bad, but just a little bizarre. We have like Brandon Clow. What is this AI infiltrating the chat now? You never know nowadays. Jack Keys, it was a pleasure watching your channel. Love it. And we'll see you in the next live. Have a good night. I look forward to having you in the next live stream, definitely. I'm not too sure if we're going to do one over the rest of the weekend, if there are any big up-and-comings in terms of model data, if things become a little bit more concise, precise, whatever you want to use to describe it. We may meet again on Sunday, but if not, we'll talk again on Monday for sure. Here's Willow. She's reminding me we got to go. We'll talk again probably on Monday. I have a lot of homework to catch up on and then just a bunch of other things depending on when it is I get out tomorrow. We will see what happens, but will you see the word hype in your dreams tonight? Dear God, I hope not. But you know what? If I do, I'm just going to get hyped up alongside it. I have PTSD from that word. I'm not even going to tell people, like, get hyped. Gabriel, if you're still in the chat and we ever go work out here really soon, I'm not going to ever say get hyped. I'm just going to say get pumped, get motivated, get excited. Willow, do you have something you want to say to the chat? Because now you're blocking the view and we're focusing right on the rear. We're not even focusing on anything else. So thank you all very much for watching. And yeah, we'll see you again very soon. If you have any additional questions, comments, or concerns that I could not address in the chat tonight, please drop them in the comments section down below. Please consider hitting that subscribe button if you are brand new to the channel, or if you've been wandering in and out of these live streams despite the ruckus that is going on in the chat tonight. Please do consider hitting that subscribe button. I promise you that we try to be as authentic as possible despite the camaraderie or the chaos that is ensued in the chat. You can be the judge of it, determine whether or not the things I've said are unrealistic, realistic, or just completely off the wall, off the chain crazy. Thank you very much. A special shout out to TRG and One Nation Weather if they are still in the chat as well. I do see One Nation Weather. I do really appreciate you tuning in. Thank you very much for the moderators. TRG, again, thank you for your continued support and for being a moderator as well. I tried to reach out to you privately on X, but I could not find the private message option. Maybe I dorked that up, but I was going to give you a specialty thank you in your private messages on X a couple of days ago. I hadn't forgotten. I haven't forgotten. Maybe I'm just still getting spun up on how to use that app, but I couldn't find it. So if you're still there, drop me a message, drop me a comment, whichever you prefer. And yeah, guys, that's all she wrote. Feel free to drop me a follow on any of my other social media platforms, X, Instagram, TikTok. I provide day-to-day coverage on that as well, trying to get more active on the X, trying to continue to keep the stride and the momentum going on TikTok. I've been slacking on that for the last couple of days, unfortunately, but I definitely want to get a little bit more into the weeds, especially with the tropical information on that. Maybe start to garner a little bit more of the information or different view demographic on there, because I know I'll have a lot of folks from severe weather season. And yeah, that's all she wrote, guys. I hope you have a wonderful start to your weekend. I hope you have a good rest of your Friday night wherever you're tuning in from, especially since it is getting kind of late here on the East Coast. Gonna get ready for bed and do it all over again tomorrow. But yeah. Oh, there you go. Okay, so he is still in the chat. Perfect. I'm glad you saw that, TRG. I know. All right, guys. She said the word. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening and be safe this weekend if I don't see you. But until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario signing out.